Welcome to Topless Talks with Nova, episode 22. How you doing, guys? Happy Monday. I hope you're all having a lovely day and you had an awesome last 2 weeks. I just want to say, I love you guys so much. So the biggest problem that I have with what I do with my job and the things that I do on a day-to-day basis is that I have to always look good. I have to get ready. I have to do my hair, do something with my face. I have to put effort into my appearance. But with this podcast, you know what I do to get ready for this podcast is I take off my shirt and then I sit in front of the camera and then I talk. You guys aren't so worried about how I look because most of you don't even see me. And those of you who do see me don't really care that much as far as I can tell. We're not talking about stuff that requires me to be cute, at least in my opinion. So thank you. Love you guys for that. Anyway, so this episode I've been wanting to do for a while. And I'm sorry in advance. I did lie last episode about this being a light episode. It's not true. In fact, this episode might get deleted off of my video platform because of the topic and because of the things that I have to say, which are quite controversial. You guys might get pissed off at me, and I run that risk, and I beg of you to please just hear me out till the end. Then once you're done, you can be mad at me and voice your concerns, whatever. But just hold out to the end. Don't jump to any conclusions. Hear what I have to say, okay? This episode, we are talking about sex workers. And not just oh, what do I do day to day? But no. We are talking about sex workers as a whole, not just online, but also stripping, sugaring, in person, anything of that nature, findom, camming, OnlyFans girls. We're talking about the umbrella term that covers all of them, and this discrimination that we all face, and legislation that does more harm towards us than actually helps us. The social stigma that we face, because I think it's important for you guys to be able to enjoy the content that I put out to its full potential. You need to know everything that goes into it. This matters a lot because it affects me directly. I've been in the industry since I was 20 years old, and I don't plan on leaving anytime soon. This really does affect me directly. And if you guys care about, what's going on in my life, then I urge you to listen, and I urge you to go into this conversation with an open mind, okay? So, I know you guys have heard it before. Sex work is the oldest profession, and it is. Fucking Mary Magdalene was a prostitute, okay? But despite that, we face a lot of discrimination. In banking, I can be completely banned from Cash App, Venmo, PayPal if they catch a whiff of what the transactions are, if they find out that I'm trading content, or if I were meeting with people, or, anything of that, they can just completely shut down my account. Not only that, but banking institutions as well. Actual FDIC banks can do that exact same thing. If they find out that my transactions are coming from a place that they don't agree with, then they can completely shut down my account. And a lot of times that's just because banking institutions are held by the balls of their funders. And a lot of the time, those funders are either conservative or they're with the fucking church. So, getting off topic. So banks can drop us. And statistically, when Sesta Fosta, which is a legislation that came into effect 2017, I believe, I'll get into that. But when that went into effect, 40% of sex workers lost their banking. And that is so dangerous because that forces us into a cash-based system. If we're not allowed to have banks, if we're not allowed to use Cash App, if we're not allowed to use any of these big money trading apps, then we are forced to use cash. And not only does that promote financial irresponsibility, but it also leaves us vulnerable for assault, robbery, theft. Even in situations where we do have a bank or we are allowed to keep our bank and bank with them, it is incredibly hard to get a loan from said bank. Even if, like me, for instance, say I want to buy a house, the validity of my income is inherently put up to question. You know, they're going to wonder where I work, what do I do for a living, what kind of work it is. I can either lie or I could tell the truth and be discriminated against or be just downright denied for the loan. And that's just banking. In the housing market, even just renting. Rental properties were allowed to evict sex workers for moral nuisance up until 2017. We were allowed to be evicted for just being what we are up until 2017. And that is so dangerous because that forces us out on the street. I mean, who is there any other profession that has that level of discrimination? And that's actually the whole argument, is that that's like kind of where the disconnect lies, is people who agree with this type of policy and agree with this type of legislation, they don't think that sex work is work. That's precisely where the disconnect lies, is they don't see it as work. They see it as sex, and they see it as exploitation. And so they don't think that sex workers deserve rights, workers' rights, because they don't think it's work. You know, they don't agree with the fact that we're out here doing labor. Getting off topic again. And the thing is, with the banking discrimination, it's really hard to get loans or, you know, to even rent property, because these rental properties want so much income, and then they also want you to have a good credit score, and then they also want you to have this and they want you to have that, which is hard if you fucking got kicked out of the bank. You know, it's really hard to function in society if you don't have a bank account. It's possible. It's extremely difficult, though. And going on to healthcare, discrimination in healthcare. There have been cases of sex workers that have been judged and just downright denied care for being honest about their job, which you don't need me to tell you that that's fucked up on so many levels. But it is happening out there. And it causes people, sex workers especially, to just completely just not seek care. And especially for my in-person sex workers, that can be especially dangerous for STDs and violence, and you know, like the harm that it causes is infinite, and the help is just not there. There is no benefit from this type of discrimination, from this type of taboo. Even children are being taken away from sex workers. Courts are stripping custody rights from sex workers purely because it's their job. Even if there's no proof of harm to the child, it's like there are kids getting taken away from their families purely because their mom does sex work. And I've even looked into it myself. Cam girls are even losing custody of their children, and the courts are saying it's because of the risk of stalkers. That's the kind of guys that they're putting it under. And it's a really scary thought to think that because of your job, that people are stripping away your rights. And I understand that the fear of stalkers is real. It is, but why is the responsibility solely put on the sex worker? Why is the brunt of that have to be on the mother of the child, of the family? You know, why can't our court system just handle stalkers better? I'm getting off topic yet again. Focus, Nova. But anyway, like with all of that, it's not even just the laws that make all of this fucked up. It's the systems. It's the systems in which these laws are under. So I don't remember exactly the year that it was put in place, the policy, but SESTA FOSTA, what I mentioned earlier, is basically like a policy that made websites liable for facilitating sex work. So this is when Craigslist and Backpages was shut down. And they did it all under the front that they were trying to end trafficking, which is great. No, like we don't want non-consensual sex work. We don't want trafficking. We want that to be gone. But SESTA FOSTA did more harm than good in the sex industry. And that's because sex workers lost their safe ways to screen clients. Because Backpages was a huge community for sex workers to communicate with each other and say, hey, this guy's bad, don't fuck with him, or this guy's great. They completely lost their screening abilities, you know, which is dangerous on so many levels. Also, they lost all of their victim resources. So all of these platforms housed a lot of resources where victims, sex worker victims, could get help and seek help. And they completely lost all of those resources. All under the guise of wanting to stop trafficking, they harm actual consensual sex workers. So you can see how the policy isn't really benefiting the people within the actual industry. And the thing is, sex workers within the industry, we never get a say in the policy because we are always just reduced down to victims or criminals or accomplices. We are only one of those three things in the media and according to SWERFs, and we aren't human. We don't get to have like a variety of different experiences. We are only either victims, criminals, or accomplices. And then there's the Nordic model, which is another different kind of policy or like a model put in place to, again, stop trafficking, but really it just harms more than helps actual consensual sex workers. So the Nordic model goes after the buyers, not the workers, which again seems like a decent plan, but then it pushes the buyers underground and makes them have to be more anonymous or want to be more anonymous, which doesn't allow the sex worker to have a safe screening process, because if the buyer doesn't want to give their full name out of their own safety, then the sex worker isn't going to be able to do a proper screening process, which leaves them vulnerable. In policy and in media, sex work and trafficking, they a lot of times get lumped together, which is really, really unsafe because sex workers are unable to report abuse within their job out of fear of looking like a criminal or being treated like a criminal. But not all of the laws are bad. Not everything that has happened up to this point in regards to the sex industry has been bad. So like I said, in 2017, New Orleans removed their Moral Clause Act, which allowed rental properties to evict sex workers under moral obligation or moral nuisance, under a moral nuisance. So that was a great thing. In 2003, New Zealand completely decriminalized sex work, which means that sex workers can now report abuse or report violence without getting arrested. And it means that they now have workers' rights, that's the fucking goal right there. Decriminalization saves lives. During COVID in the UK, sex workers were completely excluded from any government aid, which sucks. But all of the sex worker organizations paid out the sex workers directly. So that was a great thing, amazing thing that is a positive. I'm just trying to list off positive things because I've been saying a lot of negative shit. So this is me counteracting that, okay? In 2014, New York City eliminated condoms as evidence, which means that because up until then, police could arrest someone that they suspected to be a prostitute, and if they had condoms on them, then that could be seen as evidence. In 2014, they eliminated that, which was amazing. Because not only does that promote unsafe environment within sex workers industry, but it promotes unsafe sexual environments within the public as well. Because if you're arresting someone because they have condoms, then they're not going to want to be carrying condoms ever. It's really messed up the way our society is ran, isn't it? Like I said, decriminalization saves fucking lives. So now we're going to be talking about the social stigma that sex workers face. I'm going to be talking a lot about like societal issues, and then I'm also going to be talking about more in depth on the victims or accomplices thing, because I think that's really important to get into, and that's going to be the portion of the episode that I think people are going to disagree with or be triggered by the most. So, whorephobia is a fear or hatred or dehumanization for sex workers. Because face it, people are disgusted with sex workers. You see it everywhere. SWERFs, which is sex worker exclusionary radical feminists, which is an entire feminist movement that believes that sex workers should not be included within that feminist movement. Not only are they disgusted with us, but they're disgusted with any man, woman, non-binary person that is attracted to us. And regardless of whether or not someone agrees with the content that I make or finds me attractive, or even if they are disgusted with me as a human, like, does that also mean that you don't think that I deserve workers' rights, like within my industry? The argument that sex work isn't work, I'm putting in labor. It's not only emotional, but it's physical labor. And doing sexual favors isn't the only type of work that I do. The things that I do on my day-to-day with my work don't all fall under the scope of sex work. You know, a lot of the work that I do is just regular content creation. But again, a lot of these people don't think that content creators deserve workers' rights either. But that's a whole different fucking conversation. But the thing is, like, people don't see us as humans. That we are greatly dehumanized. The thing is, like, these people are desperately holding on to patriarchy, because me having sexual agency, me being able to decide what I want to do with my body and my sexual attention is a threat to patriarchy and capitalism, really. And when someone shows disgust or disdain for my lifestyle or for my work, it's just highlighting the shame that they feel within their lives. Because the thing is, like, they feel shame about their sex. They feel shame about sex. And so they look at me, someone that doesn't feel shame about sex, and they're disgusted by that. They're like, what the fuck is this person doing? They are absolutely enraged that I'm not disgusted with myself. And that's really all that disgust shows me. It's just like, it's projection. It's like they feel shame within themselves and they're pissed that I don't also feel shame. And every time someone, like, that's why it's so easy to brush that kind of thing off for me, because it's like you're just showing me your own shame, babe. Like, the fact that you're so concerned about what I'm doing with my life, about what I'm doing with my body, shows how much shame that you have towards your own body. You know, that's really all it shows me. And like the ass backwards concept of like sex sells, but don't you dare sell sex. It's like only corporations can sell sex, but the person at like, so like A corporation has a sexual commercial. The corporation's fine, but the person, the woman in the middle of that sexual commercial, she's the one that is pointed at and judged. She's the one that shouldn't have opened her legs for money. You see how fucking ass backwards that is? But anyway, I'm going to highlight a few of my own personal struggles that I have dealt with because I am a sex worker. And I'm not calling anyone out. I'm not pointing fingers at anyone. This is just things that I've experienced. Finding a therapist is extremely hard. Finding a therapist, because every therapist that I've had, even therapists that quote unquote support sex workers, every time I voiced my struggles, I voiced the fact that I'm burnt out, the fact that like the struggles within my industry, because like every other industry, I suffer from burnout and abuse and fucking unfairness and low pay, and like I suffer the same things within my workplace that you suffer within your workplace. And so when I voice those concerns, when I voice those struggles, every fucking therapist that I've ever had has been like, "Oh, well, are you sure that this is what you want to do then?" Okay, Karen, are you telling the fucking surgeon the same thing? Are you telling the insurance agent the same thing? Like, are you telling the insurance agent to quit their job too? No, just me because I'm a fucking sex worker. Sorry, I'm about to go on a rant here. And on more of a broader sense, just like the shaming that I get from friends and family, and partners and family of partners. And a lot of times they will frame it in such a way to where you'll think that you do have their support and you'll be able to vent to them about certain aspects of your industry, and you'll be able to open up and be like, wow, like this person hears me, this person actually cares about what I have to say, and this person cares whether or not I have rights and the fact that I have a support system. And then they turn around and then they use all of that against you because you're a fucking sex worker to fit whatever narrative that they're trying to write. And this is just a personal experience, but unfortunately, it is a personal experience that has happened more than once within different eras of my life too, and within those eras, working in different corners of the sex industry. So it's not just something that cam girls face. It's not just something that OnlyFans girls face. It's not just something that in-person sex workers face. It's something that we all face. Shaming from friends and family. And not only shaming, but objectification from friends and family. I'm about to get real fucking vulnerable here. But the objectification from people that you genuinely thought you would never get that from aunts and uncles, from grandparents, from cousins, from strangers you've never fucking met. People think that because you are posting certain things online that you consent to being objectified 24 hours a day, which is not true. I consent to being objectified in the things that I post. Nothing more. In my day-to-day life, I am a human. I'm not Nova like 100% of the time. I'm not Nova 24 hours a day. I have a personal life. And in that personal life, even in my Nova life, I deserve to not be objectified when I don't want to be. Like I deserve the respect and dignity that I deserve, that I fucking request of people. But because I'm a sex worker, people think that consent just goes out the window. Because you can go online and see certain parts of my body that I no longer deserve to be respected, or that my consent can just be bought, which is so messed up. And that goes for friends, like I said, friends, family, partners, everyone. There's just like a certain level of like entitlement that when people learn of your job, when people learn that you do sexual favors for money, whether it be online, in person, whatever, when people learn that about you, they in their brain, there's like a somersault. There's like a fucking crazy gymnastics that goes on to either justify their hate towards you now or to somehow make you into less of whatever you were 10 seconds ago before they knew what you did for work. And as for finding a partner, it's not only hard to find someone that understands and that won't take it personally and that can is secure enough to be okay with it, but on the flip side, you also have to find someone that's not going to like over sexualize you, because men, in my experience, men and women really, people that are in my life romantically, they a lot of times see the persona that I put online and they think that I'm just like this super sexual being, in which sometimes I am. Like I am a very sexual person in comparison to a lot of people. But I also am a human. I also like am just a girl, you know? I also just enjoy intelligent conversation and I want to get to know people and I like to cuddle and I like to laugh and joke around and I'm a well-rounded, I'm a full human. I'm a human living the full fucking spectrum of the experience of being a human. Who'da thunk? Wow, who'da thought that? But people reduce me, and I'm speaking personally here, people reduce me down to overly sexual, or really that's it. People reduce me down to being overly sexual. And like I said, I am. I am overly sexual, but that's not all I am. So going back actually to the whole victims and accomplices thing. Because being a sex worker, I'm in a lot of conversations online about sex work in general. A lot of conversations about sex work and the morality of it and the legislation of it and things to come and so on and so forth. And a lot of times when I'm partaking or if I'm observing these conversations, sex workers are reduced to either victims or criminals and or accomplices. And so like with the whole victim thing, it frames sex workers as like broken and exploited and incapable of making their own choices, which is dangerous to say the least, because that lets anti-trafficking campaigns to portray sex workers as people who need to be saving. And when they run with that narrative, they get to do raids and detain them based on oh, they didn't know any better. Because under this logic, no one would choose this unless they were forced to. Under that logic, no one would choose sex work unless they were exploited or if they were desperate or traumatized, which completely takes away any and all agency of consensual sex workers and completely invalidates sex work as a whole. So that's dangerous. And it ignores diversity of experience. Like it ignores me. The main reason I do sex work is the freedom. You know, I get to choose my own schedule. I get to choose my own price. I don't have to answer to a boss. I don't have to clock in for someone. That's the main reason I chose sex work, is because I have full control over my work for the most part. When it comes to legislation, I ain't got shit. But when it comes to setting my prices, who I want to work with, the kinds of things that I'll do, everything I do is fully consensual. Do you get to say that about your job? Do you get to say you don't have to do anything you don't want to do? Do a lot of people get to say that? No, not a lot of people get to say that. So the fact that I get to say that about my job is the sole reason of why I got into it. I don't want the main reason. Another reason is because I just love to entertain, okay? So reducing sex workers down to victims only silences voices that need to be heard. That's really all that does, is it's only harmful. And it makes consensual sex workers, they're seen as in denial, or they're like too damaged to be able to make their own choices, which is, if there's any group of people besides children that legally within policy they're allowed to say that about, then everyone is at risk, you know? And that's gonna be in a potential political episode that I make, but if there's one demographic at risk, then we're all at risk. Okay. And so moving on to accomplices. When sex workers aren't seen as victims, they're seen as either criminals or accomplices to crime, or accomplices to the patriarchy. Another conversation that I see a lot, and this is what's gonna piss a lot of people off. I see a conversation had a lot online within sex workers' spaces of comments about pedobaiting. So there will be a video of a sex worker where she's wearing a little cute skirt and her hair's in pigtails, and she looks quite young. And a lot of comments that I see will be, in a lot of comments from swerfs especially, and so-called radical feminists will say, "Oh, they're a stain on society. They're baiting pedophiles." And they are absolutely disgusted by the way that the sex worker looks, because God forbid a sex worker have a small frame and small boobs. And I used to be one of those people. I used to be one of the people that saw a man that was attracted to a woman with a smaller frame, and I'd be like, wow, he's probably a pedophile. And I am guilty of that, and I can admit that right now. But when you sit and think about that, when you sit for more than fucking 10 seconds and you think about, well, pedophiles like children, first of all, that's not a fucking child. And then second of all, that is taking literally all accountability from the fucking weirdos and putting it onto the woman. That is literally taking all accountability of the actual pedophiles, of the actual fucking weirdos that are online and baiting children, talking to children, and you're putting all the responsibility on the sex worker that just so happens to be wearing something questionable, that might be putting her hair in a questionable way, that might be saying or doing something questionable. I'm getting a little riled up here, because you don't have to agree with the content. You can be disgusted with it. You don't have to like it. You don't have to indulge in it. But the thing is, if you're calling that pedobaiting, then you have to stop and consider the kinds of people that are indulging in that content. Because the people that are indulging in that content, your fucking husbands and your brothers and your dads, the men in your life are indulging in this type of content. So are they the pedophiles that you're fucking so worried about us baiting? I'm sorry, I'm getting riled up here. My point is that if every single sex worker that made that kind of content, because I don't really make that kind of content, I see it and I'm like, you know, like, I find it questionable. I agree, it's fucking weird. But that doesn't mean that I'm going to sit here and say she doesn't deserve workers' rights. Or I'm not going to sit here and be like, wow, she's an accomplice and a criminal. Because she's simply surviving within the industry that we are in. And the thing is, if every single one of those sex workers just completely fell off the face of the earth, pedophiles would still be rocking and rolling, baby. Pedophiles would still be fucking here. They would still exist. Children would still be getting snatched up. Like, it is not the sex workers' fault. While the practices and the actions may be a bit questionable, let's remember what the actual problem is here. Let's fight the actual fight. Let's put accountability where it is fucking deserved. And that's not on the sex workers' backs. And a lot of like, the argument will be, oh, this is a children's app. The internet is an unsafe place, even for adults. The internet is just an unsafe place. I don't think that children should be on the internet at all. You know, personally, I think that a lot of adults don't even really know how to properly and safely use the internet. It is a tool. I think that the internet is just a unsafe place in general. And to make sex workers the scapegoat or the martyr for every issue or every trafficking issue or every child fucking pedo baiting issue is just a cop out, and it's taking away actual responsibility from fucking weirdos and putting it on women that are simply trying to survive within an industry that they have no say in. You know, like, I don't get a say in what legislation passes. I don't get a say. You know, like, I don't have workers' rights because a lot of times actual pedophiles will come into my chat room. And this has happened to me many times before. And this is another thing that is going to trigger people. But a lot of times, actual fucking pedophiles will come into my chat room and reveal more and more of what they have done or what they do, just to see how like how far they can go, how much they can say without me reacting, how much they can get away with. And that's something that me as a sex worker, I'm not allowed to talk about. I'm not allowed to bring that up because I'm a fucking victim or I'm an accomplice. I'm pedo baiting. So, do you see where it's fucked up there? Me being the person that I am, I completely block them, report them immediately. But someone who's not as strong-willed as I, who doesn't have the agency that I have, or even the knowledge or the resources that I have to report them or to seek mental health like assistance or like a support system. Imagine how they're doing. They're in a so much more vulnerable place, but then they're reduced to victims and criminals. And so, do you see where I'm getting pissed off here? Do you see? And I know that a lot of you don't think this way, and a lot of you really do. Like, you're super supportive, and like the way that like, I appreciate you guys so much, and like the support that you show, and I'm not talking to you specifically. When get on these rants on these podcasts, like, I'm just speaking into the void, okay? I'm just sitting in front of a camera, screaming into a microphone. This conversation is not an easy conversation to have. It requires a lot of nuance and a lot of open-mindedness, and not everyone is equipped to deal with that. A lot of people are dealing with unhealed sexual trauma that they have not seen legal recourse for, have not seen any justice, and have not had any healing. And so a lot of times when they see a sex worker behaving in a certain way, it's easy to point the finger to them and be like, you're the fucking reason. But like I said before, if you took every single one of those creators away off the face of the earth or shut down the internet, pedophiles would still exist. The violence towards children and women and sexual violence in general would still exist. I really did get off topic there at the end. This is a much longer episode than I'm used to giving, and I ranted a lot, and I would love to hear your guys' response to this. I would love to hear the things you guys have to say. I'm worried that this episode will get deleted off of my video platform, but we'll see. I try to keep it as educational as possible. A lot of people are going to struggle with what I had to say today, especially there at the end. Just know that I'm only saying this out of defense and out of support of the people within my industry, because I function within this industry. I have for the last 10 or so years, and I've seen all different kinds of ways that people try to invalidate it or try to villainize it. And I just, maybe create a world in which, I don't know. I don't have all the answers, but I do know that decriminalization saves lives. And SESTA and FASTA and the Nordic model do more harm than good. And I think that if you need to, like, if you want to get rid of sex trafficking and violence, like sexual violence, then you need to start hearing the voices of sex workers, because they're at the heart of that, you know? Like, they are at the heart of sexual violence, and they are at the heart of all of these sexual issues. So it would be wonderful to live in a time in which a sex worker is in fucking Congress or something, or there's someone like a former sex worker in a position of power that gives the rest of us a voice. I would love that. You know, even if it's just a stripper. Doesn't have to be an in-person sex worker. Just give me a stripper and put her in Congress or something. Anyway, thank you for listening to what I have to say. I'm sorry if I got a little angry there for a second, but it's all out of love. And you guys are really good listeners. So I think that the majority of you will take this episode in stride. And I believe in you guys, okay? All right, guys. So I'll see you next episode. And remember, sex work is work.